Welcome everybody, and thank you for being here for class. Today's class is repair proposal, amendments and notifications, what we're going to be doing during an inspection period, and of course the resolution period. In today's class, we're going to be covering these things: counting your days, preparing your buyer, preparing your seller, what is a reasonable repair request and response, writing a repair proposal, writing an amendment, and using the notification form. So with that, counting days, I know I talk about this a lot, and I want you all to write down what I'm about to say and what I have on the screen there. All days count, but a deadline can't end on a Saturday, Sunday, or federal holiday. The deadline will roll to the next business day. The one time this happens a lot is when we have those holiday weekends, when Monday's a federal holiday and your inspection period might end on a Saturday. You're actually rolling over till Tuesday at 11:59 p.m. I do have all the federal holidays in our shared document file under federal holidays, because not all holidays are federal holidays. So with the exception of these dates, this happens to all deadlines, including earnest money deposit. But with the exception of the closing date, date of possession, completion of repair deadline, and offer expiration date. Now the closing date can't end on any of these logically, because none of our title companies or attorneys work on any of those days, and money can't transfer. So do be watching when your closing date is when you are writing your purchase and sale agreements and counteroffers. And always remember that end of day is 11:59 unless it's stated as a deadline. And the only time that usually happens is in our offer deadline time frame. Otherwise, end of day is always 11:59 p.m. because nobody can remember that 12 a.m. is midnight, not 12 p.m. So they made it 11:59. Counting days, this is actually in your purchase and sale agreement lines 444 through 453. Take a picture of this and keep it in your notes or whatever. It has all of those in there with a few other caveats, but it explains all those dates. Do know that the date counting days start after an action. The best way to remember it is if you bind on Tuesday, your day starts counting on Wednesday. If you send over your proposal, day one is the next day after it is sent. So it's the next day is the day that starts counting. The do count on a calendar your days, don't do addition. That's the only way the best way I can tell you to do it. I actually pull up a calendar and count. It also gives me an idea of where my weekends and my holidays are lying. But if you try and add days together like math, it's not going to work. I just promise you, count it on a calendar, my best hint to you. So there's your counting day charts. And please understand, easiest thing to understand once you understand it. Preparing our buyer for an offer before even making an offer. I'm going to say this first. I feel that currently I am seeing so much bad negotiation going into repairs that I feel it's a ploy by some agents. Maybe they saw it on late night TV, real estate agent TV, I don't know, where they come in with a great offer and then they try and renegotiate huge price discounts after the repair period. Prepare your buyer not to do that. Okay, you're going to explain to them that inspections are to find things that are broken, not to replace, bring things to code, or remodel. Now, it is very difficult for some of our clients that are moving from other areas, the code thing. We do not have to bring things to code to sell them, as some states require. So they do need to understand that. And it's also not a time to get everything updated. So while you're looking at this house, thinking that this could be the one, I'd be pulling up that property condition disclosure, looking at what is disclosed in that and what must be addressed. Do know that anything that is disclosed in the property condition disclosure or the septic disclosure or any disclosure that they have given, even in your, it shouldn't be official, but if they state something even in the listing that is broken, you've gotten notice that that's broken, and you're going to have to address that in your purchase and sale agreement. I do have a stipulation in our clauses that you can add if they are disclosing something that your client still wants to be able to request repair on. Example is, if, say, they have disclosed that one of the HVAC units doesn't work. It's like a window, well, not a window one, it's one of the mini splits. Maybe that doesn't work. And they put that in the disclosure, does not work. But your buyer maybe wants to get some look at it, get it fixed, something. Either you're going to put in your purchase and sale agreement that the seller shall give the buyer credit towards X number of dollars towards a new mini split, put it in your offer, or you can put this in their special stipulation: buyer shall have the right to inspect and request repairs on any disclosed items, if any. But this is my wording now, but watch out, if you do put this, lenders might have a little bit of a fit. My wording, buyer shall have the right to inspect and request repairs on any disclosed items, or on disclosed items, if any, kind of leaves it so it's vague, and a lender might not have a problem. It might be something you're going to have to talk to your lender about first. But do note, disclosed items, you can't request them to be repaired during your repair resolution period. It's disclosed, you have to address it in your purchase and sale agreement. So say this is the one, or they are pretty sure it's the one, or it's in their top 3. While viewing the home, I'm going to tell you to try and get ages off the mechanicals and appliances. You can just simply open the doors to everything that, like your doors, your oven door, your microwave door, any of the built-ins, or if you're going to ask for the refrigerator, washer, dryer. I know that feels a little invasive, but maybe with your air conditioning units outside, any air handlers inside, water heaters, be taking pictures of the metal model serial number. Usually the year it was manufactured is on there somewhere, or you can run the serial number and it will tell you when it was made. So if this is one of their top 2 or 3, be investigating deeper. Maybe even go back for a second visit if they decide that's the one. Nowadays we actually have time for that, usually, unless it's a super hot property. That would be a really great thing to do. Run all the sinks, look at all the windows, open all the doors, look in the cabinets, look under sinks, even look in the crawl space if possible. Take a good old sniff to see if you can see if something's going on, because you really need to understand what kind of condition this home is on a high level going into it. So do go through that home and do these things. You might every once in a while have a seller or an agent that gets a little bent out of shape because you are flushing toilets. But if you're going to be making an offer, this is really something that people need to start doing. We used to do it all the time, just to really know what that general condition of the home is. Because when you start writing that offer, say you find out that the HVAC is 20 years old and your client just, even though it's working, just cannot deal with that. And they're not going to buy it unless the seller replaces it. You write that in the offer. You don't wait through your buyer to pay $1,000 for inspections to see if the seller might do that. Let's get that addressed in the offer up front if it's something they actually know that they're going to be doing. Explain that the seller will not be replacing things that are functioning or just replacing because of age. Prepare the buyer by explaining that the inspection report will be long, often with recommendations to seek further evaluations by experts in whatever system. Discuss with the buyer getting a credit towards straightforward repairs, as they will probably want to direct the repairs. So that first paragraph I just read, warn your client before they get that inspection report. Can't tell you, every year we probably have 5 or 6 buyers that freak out because they get a 70, 80, 90, maybe 100-page report, which is perfectly normal, even up to 125 pages or more, depending on the size of the house, because that inspector is going to note everything because he's going to protect himself. He also wants to document it for your buyer. But warn them before they see it. If you want to get a sample of one, I'll send you some. They're long, they're intense. And I also tell some of my first-time buyers, it's going to sound like the house is falling apart. It's not. Now, of course, you want to attend that inspection with your buyer at the end of the inspection and have that inspector explain this to your buyer face to face. We'll talk in another class on what you can do if your buyer can't attend the inspection, because it's a whole nother level of service that you're going to provide, and you're going to have to protect yourself. So discuss that with your client. Really, you guys, really try and get your buyer to be there in town for these inspections. It kind of is staggering to me to hear that people don't go to their own inspections. It blows me away. And do know you're attending that with them. They can't go alone. They can't attend those alone. You have to be there with them. And I don't care what whoever taught you in whatever class at whatever GNR or WCR, they're wrong. And that's all due to a knee-jerk reaction on an agent that got sued because she attended the inspection, but then later resold the home with the same buyer, and nobody disclosed a major issue that was discussed at that inspection. Just don't be that agent. Be there with your buyer, taking notes, standing next to him, listening to him. Now, when you get that report, you're going to discuss with your buyer the difference between requesting that the seller do a repair and getting credit for that repair. Non-can of worms items, I strongly suggest that you get your buyer to get a credit, if possible, towards those items. Nowadays, when our sellers are paying a lot of the buyer's closing costs, there's not enough credit left. But say there is another $5,000 in closing costs that can be covered by the seller. Talk to your lender first and confirm, because what you don't want to do is negotiate something that your buyer may not get. So confirm and be really strict with your seller to make sure that there's that amount left, so your buyer can use that money they were going to use for closing costs to do these repairs. That's how that credit is given. They don't actually get cash from the seller. That's against the law. Mortgages, they can't get cash back. Things can be held in escrow to pay repairmen, but lenders don't like that either, because as we'll discuss in a few minutes, lenders don't want to know that there's anything wrong with the house. So we try and get it as a closing cost. Least favorable is getting it as a price reduction, because price reduction is reducing the price of something that's being financed over 30 years or 15 years. Now, if it's a cash buyer, yeah, that's great, because that's money in your person's pocket. So be careful about asking for a price reduction in lieu of some things, because that's not money that your client gets credit for instantly. It's something they're just not going to be paying for the next 30 years. So watch out for asking for a price reduction, unless it's a really big thing. Some repairs could be bigger issues than our inspector actually sees, and it could take further evaluation. Things that come to mind are foundation, crawl space, roof, water damage, extensive mold or fungus-like substance. So in those cases, you're probably going to ask for a professional to do those repairs, and we're going to talk about how to do that in a minute. You are not the expert. Always recommend on getting further inspections. So if something pops up, do be ready and have a vendors ready in your back pocket to recommend looking at these things. You all should have a couple of different foundation companies, structural engineers, roofers, repairmen, general contractors that you can call to help you with these. Even handymen that can give you some estimates on some things. Preparing the seller for this whole inspection resolution period. I feel like you're girding them to go into battle, but you don't want to get them off their axis and make them negative to start with. So first place to start is in their property condition disclosure. While most people see the property condition disclosure as being advantageous to the buyer, it's actually very advantageous to your seller to take that property condition disclosure and do a real thorough walk through their house and disclose anything that is broken or not working, not functioning. That's what we need to be disclosing. Definition of what an adverse fact is: conditions or occurrences generally recognized by competent licensees that have a negative impact on the value of real estate, significantly reduce the structural integrity of improvements to real property, or present a significant health risk to the occupants of the property. So if we know that there's a fungus-like substance in the crawl space, I don't care how little it is, y'all, either they get your client to get it treated or disclose it, because the minute you know about, you are disclosing that. If they don't disclose it, you're going to have to disclose it. What must be disclosed? Anything and everything that's broken, not functioning. So have your client use that property condition disclosure to disclose anything that they are not going to fix before putting that house on the market. I am very quickly moving toward recommending that our sellers get pre-inspections. I used to not be a fan of it just because I know that my inspector will find things that that next inspector will find different things, and sometimes it just feels like kind of a losing battle type thing. But in our current market situation, with these buyers coming in and asking for practically remodels and rebuilds, I think that maybe a pre-inspection will be worth the $600 or $700 to have your seller do, because then they can go through and fix all those little things that they didn't realize were going to be call-outs, and it just really amps up that house and it makes it look like it was better cared for. And then the bigger issues, it's much cheaper for a seller to get something repaired before they put it on the market than to have a buyer come in and try and negotiate. I say this all the time. What's a $1,000 fix for the seller is a $10,000 mental fix for that buyer. So I am really I'm struggling with really advising that this could be a way that we go with our sellers to get that taken care of beforehand and get those pre-inspections done. And I have a couple other ideas I'm going to cover in another class on how we can use that to our advantage to making these offers stick, such as non-refundable earnest money and things like that. So more on that later. Another thing, prepare the seller. Anything disclosed cannot be requested to be repaired in the repair proposal. It must be addressed in the purchase and sale agreement. No matter what, I'm going to tell you, we disclose it in that property condition disclosure. That buyer, 9 times out of 10 or 5 times out of 10 is going to turn around and request that it be repaired. Now, we don't want to lose a deal. It depends on what the thing is, but a lot of times I've found that pointing out to that other agent, we disclose that, and here it says it right here that you cannot request repairs on this item. Where are we now? Sometimes we have a buyer's agent that is contributing some of their compensation toward their buyer closing costs because they missed on teaching their buyer that. And as I said, that's a whole nother class. But do be aware of it for you as the buyer's agent. That's why those property condition disclosures must be in your listings before you even go, man, that's in your incomplete listing. You have all those documents in it, including a property condition disclosure. A little side note on this. Now, I often have additional disclosures. Property condition disclosure. Tennessee is very buyer beware, seller friendly. It's not very detailed. I'm just going to say that. Other states have much more detailed disclosures. I will often have my client write, and it has to be them writing it, anything else that I feel is something that could be deemed an adverse fact, such as wet crawl space, or we get some water intrusion in a crawl space. We had a very big one in the brokerage years ago that the client's yard would flood. And the agent came to me and it's like, hey, they actually posted a video years ago of their front yard flooding and some water intruded into the crawl space. And they had disclosed that, I think it said something about there had been water in the crawl space. So we had that client write a paragraph about what happens in very heavy rains exactly, and we attached it that property condition disclosure and had the buyer initially, they signed their property condition disclosure that had this attached to it. And just a few months after purchasing the home and closing, there was a big rain, front yard flooded. A month later, we get a lawsuit, seller gets a lawsuit. But because of that additional disclosure that we had them do, we were released, and so was the seller, because they warned that client that happened to that property. So that's why disclosures can be more protective of your seller than even the buyer. So, write in repair proposals and amendments. So, you as the buyer's agent are going to be reviewing the inspection report with your buyer. I have them go through it and make their list of things. I, of course, look through it, and then we jump on a call or we meet up and we go through all the things that are of importance to them and address them. When I write that repair proposal, I don't just willy-nilly, random, whatever, go through that inspection report and copy and paste things onto that proposal. I make a list of all of these and I group it by trade because it's much cleaner, and I can often shorten my proposal greatly. Licensed and insured plumber to repair the following, and then I note all these plumbing things that my client wants to request. Licensed and insured general contractor to repair whatever. Electrical's the other one. And I can make this list of hideous looking things and shorten it down to very concise and not so awful looking to that seller, because a lot of times sellers freak out when you get these long lists. But when you group it by trade, it's much more manageable. And it's also harder for the seller to not agree to do all those things, because, man, if you got a plumber there, you might as well have them do everything, because it's much cheaper to have them do everything while they're there. If you have such a long list that it doesn't fit in the box provided on your repair proposal, and do be aware that on Transaction Desk and even Dotloop, I think it was, that box scrolls up, so sometimes not everything you have on it shows. So be careful there. The other thing is you can't have it on font smaller than 8 or 9. It has to be on, I think it's at least an 8 font. You can't go down to 6. It's too small by law. So if you have so much that it doesn't fit in that box, what you're going to write in that box is see Exhibit A Repair Proposal 1. And then on a separate Word doc, you're going to make it, and then you're going to PDF it so it can't be changed, and just name it Exhibit A Repair Proposal 1. Whatever you're going to name it, you call it Exhibit, and then you just attach it to that proposal. Don't put some on the proposal and some on the exhibit. Don't do multiple proposal pages. The same with your amendments. Instead of doing multiple pages, do exhibits. And you can have multiple pages of exhibits and then merge it in Transaction Desk and send it together as one document. Be specific about who's to do the repair. I always write licensed whoever, licensed plumber, licensed electrician. There's no licensing for handyman. I'll write professional handy person to do some of those minor repairs. Sometimes we'll even go so far as to name a company to do it, which I think is great, because you might have gotten a quote from the company, you trust them, and you want them to do it. You can write that in there. Do know that if you don't say these things, that even the homeowner, their uncle, anybody can do the repair as long as it's done in a workmanlike manner. I'm writing licensed plumber to repair leaking faucets in upstairs hall baths. Maybe I'll have 3 plumbing repair things. And I'll write them all out, and I'll write see attached, and then of course attached to it, I cut and paste those portions of the report that refer to that. The surest way to make an enemy in this business is to send them the entire inspection report. You are not to do that, ever. Even if you think you're being sneaky, don't do that. Unless they ask for it, don't send the whole report. Even if it's pages and pages that you have to cut and paste, that's fine. That's what your job is. On our repair proposal and on our amendment, it says right under the list of things, these repairs shall be completed X number of days before closing. Minimum of 5 days. I like to see a week if time allows. That's cutting it pretty close. You don't want to have it the 1 day before closing that most agents put. You're going to be doing your final walkthrough and also doing your inspection, looking at this repair inspection, and things won't be fixed. And what do you do then? So request that these be completed at least 5 days before closing. I'm going to say if it can't be 5 days, make it 3 days. And do know that you can go and re-inspect. You can send your inspector to go re-inspect. Of course, it's going to cost, but that's okay. Not just you go and re-inspect, please. You and your buyer go re-inspect. Or the inspector go re-inspect. Or a licensed trade person of whatever that repair was. Go re-inspect days before closing, whatever those days are that you put in there. Be aware of that. People miss that all the time. The last thing you want is to be looking at repairs the day before. Now, the other thing is, if you're going to ask for receipts even before, like, hey, can you send me the receipts on those repairs and do your walkthrough? We don't usually write receipts to be given in the proposal or the amendment, but you could do that if you feel that it might be a issue with this particular deal. Go ahead and ask that those receipts be provided. You do have a right to get those, though. This is going to get a little complicated. I will send this PDF, this PowerPoint, to any of you that send me an email request. This is also in your Cliff Notes for writing repairs, so do know it's in there. When you are writing proposals, the hardest one to write is if there's a loan involved and you're asking for repairs to be done and credit, because you have to make sure that you're addressing several things. So I've given you the wording, and I'm not going to pain you by reading through all these, but if you notice, I have these different paragraphs address different things. I'm going to do the first one because it's the most involved. Say that you're asking for the seller to do repairs and credit towards other repairs. You are going to write a licensed plumber to repair the faucet in the upstairs bathroom. In lieu of all remaining repairs, seller to credit X number of dollars toward buyer expenses as referenced in amendment, whatever amendment it is to your purchase and sale agreement. I'll explain why you have to do 2 actual amendments if there is a loan involved. I've given you if they're going to do repairs and credit, if they're going to do repairs and reduce the purchase price, I have the wording. And what else do I have? In lieu of all remaining repairs, they're going to get a credit and a reduced purchase price is that last paragraph. So go ahead and take a screenshot of that because that's a good one to have with you at all times. The note there at the asterisk at the bottom, if there's already credit being given in your purchase and sale agreement, make sure that you add up all of that and write it in this amendment. Seller to credit an additional for a total of toward buyer expenses. So you would be replacing that sentence, seller to credit X number of dollars toward buyer expenses, with this sentence. Because you already have some in the purchase and sale agreement, you're going to be adding these, and you need to have that total. And you're going to be sending the amendment that you're going to be writing, and that we're going to talk about, to title and to the lender. This is the page I'm going to cover. If it's a cash deal, you don't need the additional amendment to the purchase and sale agreement. You do it all on a repair amendment because that tells the story of what happened with our inspections and our repairs. It's why we use a repair amendment and an additional amendment for those getting loans, and we just use a repair amendment for those that are paying cash. We are telling the story of what happened with our inspections. This is 100% to protect you, the buyer's agent, as to what happened, what was the story with these inspections and what the buyer agreed to. So if you just have a cash deal, these are the sentences you would be putting in your proposal and in your amendment. Now, your proposal, of course, is going to look different. It's going to look like the laundry list of things, and then your amendment is going to have what actually everybody agreed to. Just so you know, either side can write the repair amendment. It should be you, because you want to make sure it is done correctly. If the other side does it, what you may end up in with is an amendment that either mentions repairs that the lender doesn't want to see, and I don't mean a repair amendment, just a regular amendment that mentions repairs. Cash transactions, you only need a repair amendment, and you may remove the sentence that says as reference to an amendment, whatever, to the purchase and sale agreement. Why 2 amendments for transaction involving loans? The lender and underwriter don't want to know about repairs. Y'all, they're not stupid. They know that you're doing this for repairs. They just can't have it written. Sometimes it flags the underwriter and we get loan denials. This is how the lender tells us to do it. So you need a repair amendment to document what happened, the story of repairs and inspections. Even if it's only a credit, even if it's only for money, you need a repair amendment that references the second amendment called Amendment to the Purchase and Sale Agreement that talks about the credit or the reduced price with no mention of repairs. And that's the thing that gets sent to title and to the lender. Very often we have newer agents that we're working with on the other side that doesn't understand it. This would be a very good page to be sending them. I'll fix that typo, and when you get this, you'll be able to send them this. We have to be able to document what happened with the repairs. Why do I have to do these two? Here's a great example. The buyer asked for the water heater to be replaced in the repair proposal. The seller said, no, it works, but you know what? We're going to give you a $300 credit. One of the agent does the amendment to the purchase and sale agreement stating, seller will give $300 credit toward buyer expenses. And that's all you do to wrap up this simple little thing. 6 months later, the water heater breaks and the buyer wants to know what happened. I thought they replaced it. I thought you were going to get me a new one. Believe me, y'all, they have very short memories. But that's what we asked for. If you have that proposal asking for a water heater, and then you don't have a repair amendment that talks about what's going to happen, and all you have is an amendment that says the credit, it's not going to stand up in court. If you have a proposal that says they asked for it, and then a repair amendment that says in lieu of this, they're going to accept this, and then an amendment that says the credit, you're good. It tells the story of what happened during our repair and our repair negotiations. Some notes on your repair proposals. It's not sent to the other side until all your inspections are completed. Don't trigger the end of your inspection period by sending a request over to the listing agent. What I'll do a lot of times is say there's something wrong that we know about and we're still working on our proposal. I might say, I am not triggering the end of my inspection period. What are your feelings about asking the seller for this? I'm opening a conversation with the other side. Be very, very wary. I actually write that in there because I don't want them to think that's my proposal. Your proposal must be sent before the end of your inspection period. That's why knowing how to count days is so very important. If you wait till the end, and this sometimes brand new agents think they have to wait till the end. No, no, no. Whenever you're done and you've decided on what needs to happen, you send that proposal over. It can be way before the end of your inspection period, as long as you're done with all inspections. I think I cover this later. I'm going to say it now in case I don't. Do not ask for the seller to do additional inspections. That's up to you, the buyer. Tell your buyer no. The seller can say no, and then we're stuck. We're at a standoff. They have to do all of those inspections. But it has to be sent before the end of your inspection period, or what happens, all of you should be saying this, buying the home as is. If you do not get that proposal over before the end of inspection period, your buyer is buying the home as is. No right to request anything. A repair proposal is unilateral. As many proposals are needed can be done going back and forth between the two parties until agreement is met. All requests must be on the initial proposal form. You can't keep adding requests. All requests have to be on the first initial form. You can't go adding things. The seller cannot cancel due to your request proposal, but they can refuse all requests. The seller doesn't have to fix anything no matter what it is. They don't have to, but they can't cancel the deal because they decided they didn't like you because of all your requests. Use the proposal form, not phone calls, texts, or emails between you and the other agent. I do know that you're going to be talking to the other agent, and while you're speaking to them, you are taking intense notes, following it up with an email, but making sure everything gets written in your proposal. Those proposal forms back and forth have to tell the story of how you came to this. The buyer asks for this. The seller comes back and says they'll do this. The buyer sends a proposal. Maybe it's going to be the final one, and it looks very, very like that amendment that you're going to be writing. So we have a chain of events showing what actually happened. For homes that have a lot of stuff in them, I'm talking about a hoarder house, in your purchase and sale agreement, in the special steps, consider using TAR Clause 14A. There is a clause in the system clauses, it's 14A, that discusses the responsibility of the seller. So in the contract it says that all things should be turned on, but this clause addresses that all things should be accessible, like the mechanicals and the attic. And so if you got a hoarder house where they can't get to the attic or the crawl space, or there's just a tremendous amount of stuff, consider using clause 14A. And with my help, we can change it a bit to address what's going on in that home, because it talks about that the seller needs to have things moved out of the way for your inspection. So do know that's available. Okay, so right here I have a copy of what the repair replacement proposal looks like. Now, if you notice right up there, it's number 1. That's that hashtag is actually called a pound sign or a number sign, if you're old enough to know that. So you're using numbers, not A, B, and C. It should be numbers. We have our binding agreement date on there, and that will auto-populate if you put that binding agreement date in your transaction details once you know what it is. It's a wonderful thing to know. Also, of course, the address will be auto-populated. And then you'll have your list of items, and then you'll see there down on line 29 how many days before closing that these should be complete. And you will have a right to reinspect. So the repair amendment. Repairs amendment differ from proposals because they are an agreement and must be signed by both parties by the end of your resolution period. Now, our resolution periods, I am seeing them very often only 3 days. And if they fall across a weekend, that is very hard to get quotes for a seller, so do be aware of that. A lot of times on that first day of that proposal coming over to you, either if you're a buyer or the seller's agent, and you realize maybe they send it over on Friday night, and you have a 3-day resolution, Saturday and Sunday you're not going to be getting any quotes and you only have Monday, I would strongly suggest you do an amendment to the purchase and sale agreement extending your resolution period to you can do a date. I suggest doing a date because then it's going to be really hard to count days if you just say days. So put until maybe Thursday of the next week or Wednesday of the next week, because maybe there's a lot of things on that need quotes. You're going to need that time. The last thing you want to do is be Monday at 5 o'clock or 6 or 7. It's the end of our resolution period and we don't have agreement. What do I do? You get with that other agent and get that extended. You want to be doing it way earlier. Maybe even that morning or that afternoon. Don't wait till the last minute to do it. Because what will happen if you get to the end of your resolution period without agreement, the contract terminates. You are back to square one. You cannot revive it, and if you ended up in court trying to revive it at a later date, you'd be in trouble. You have to go back under contract with a new purchase and sale agreement. And that's a really tough one to try and convince a seller or a buyer that doesn't understand real estate at all why you have to do it. So watch those resolution periods, y'all. You want to have in your repair amendment all repairs, who's doing them, and any credit being given. Understand why we need a repair amendment and an amendment to the purchase and sale agreement if any kind of credit or price reduction is being given. Why we need a repair amendment or a notification if there's any kind of an inspection period. So if any kind of inspection period was requested, or maybe even a pass-fail, you're going to need a notification form. But even just with repair, you had an inspection period, and say it's a great house, and those buyers got a great price, and they've decided they're not going to request anything. Y'all, you can't just let it go. You can't just go, we're fine. By the end of the inspection period, if your clients are taking it as is, you must send over a notification form. The notification form that says the buyer has completed any and all inspections and is accepting it in its current as-is condition. You must have that because, believe me, buyers have very short memories. And they're going to say, no, we talked about this or that, or maybe they mentioned something about that water heater, or about maybe getting the HVAC serviced. And in their memory, they think that something was agreed to. You must have a notification form if your client is taking the property as is. If they did a pass-fail, you have to file a notification form before the end of the inspection period that they are taking it as is. Notification form. Get it done. I will not pass your file if we don't have something that tells me and maybe a future lawsuit judge what happened during this period. Either side can write the amendment, but it should be you because I don't trust the other side to do it. So this is what your repair amendment looks like. It's very much like the proposal, except it's not numbered. There's only one of them. Sometimes we actually have to do two of these every once in a while. Maybe something breaks along the way, but we'll talk about that in another class. So it looks very much like that repair proposal. You would list what's going on between lines 8 and 23, including the credit that you're going to mention as mentioned in amendment number whatever it is to the purchase and sale agreement. Both sides sign it. You get this done before the end of your resolution period. You are good to go. Yay. This is just a regular amendment to your purchase and sale agreement. Just so you all know, when you're looking at amendments in your transaction desk, there is an amendment for practically everything. The one thing you never want to do is use the generic amendment, because you actually have to sign that, and I don't want you having to sign something. There is an amendment to everything. Use the proper one. In this case, it's an amendment to the purchase and sale agreement. And whatever number amendment it is, you might have done an amendment at the very beginning, something to amend in the contract. So this might be number 2. Most likely it's going to be number 1 because inspections happen right after we go under contract. That's what that would look like, with you stating what dollar amounts to put in there and no mention of repair, because this is what's getting sent to our title and our lender. Notification form. If after inspections the buyer is accepting the property as is, you must use this. If the buyer is canceling due to inspections, you must use the notification form, and a mutual release if earnest money has been deposited. The notification form is complete in itself if no earnest money has been deposited. I'm going to strongly suggest that you also do the mutual release, because it has stronger wording for release if somebody decides to sue down the line. So even though the notification form states that that's complete enough, we're almost always doing that mutual release as well. And I have to sign that. And y'all, when you send a mutual release to me to sign, no matter what it's for, please write me a note in that transaction email that states what happened. Buyer is canceling due to inspection issues. I don't need to know what they are. I just need to know that's what's going on. It's one side telling the other side something. It's the buyer telling the seller, we're accepting it as is in this case. Only one side signs it. There should be at least one notification form in every file. You as a buyer's agent should be sending a notification form to the sellers, the listing agent, 1 or 2 times, maybe 3 times in that first few weeks of your deal to let the other side know. My buyer's made loan application. My buyer's ordered the appraisal and paid for it. If my buyer is switching lenders, you have to notify them in this. Take a look at that notification form. If you are the seller and you haven't received earnest money, that's how you demand it. That's how you cancel the deal if it hasn't been deposited. If they haven't made loan application and you're the seller's side, that's how you demand them to do it, and that's how you cancel it. Notification forms, think of them as the forms that keeps things moving and keeps you compliant and not getting sued. Let's see. Make sure that you're using the correct side on the notification form. The first half is buyer to seller. The second half is seller to buyer. There's a box at the top that you check. You'll see it in a second. And then there's lines that the first half is for the buyer to the seller. Second half is for the seller to the buyer. Here we go. This is the first page. I don't have the rest of the pages. But if you notice line 1, it's which side notifying who. And then the first few pages is for notifications from the buyer to the seller's side. So make sure you know what this form is. Y'all should kind of have it memorized, okay? Let's see. And that ends our class. Thank you so much for being here today.